Fuck you and you. I hate your friends and they hate me too. Fuck you and you. It's that hot girl by my anthem. Turn it up and throw attention.
Good day, everyone. Welcome back, Gay Boy Lego. Today we're going to be doing the tell-all for the 1996 Marilyn Manson model. You know what? I kind of enjoyed doing that thing with like the MPAL Suricon, where I just kind of dish, you know? Take a little while, take a bit, sit back, and I just explain all the different things and machinations that went into constructing this here spectacular opus to my favorite musician. I guess when it comes to this, we'll just go right back to the beginning, I suppose. I was born on a warm May Sunday. I'm kidding. Last summer, I got my driver's license, and a distant relative lent me his car, a real beater. Didn't have any AC. It was a brown 1999 Ford Focus, real piece of crap. But it did have a CD player. So, I decided to purchase, over the course of that summer, the entirety of Marilyn Manson's discography. I only dabbled in his stuff beforehand, just listening to like some of his bigger hits, his more popular stuff, but I never really delved into trying to get him to get to know his music on a real comprehensive level. And that summer I decided to do that. And that's the summer I had first heard the song 1996, which would go on to inspire this model right here. Initially, when it comes to the album of Antichrist Superstar, I had a lot less appreciation for it than I did for like Mechanical Animals or Hollywood. But since that summer and over time, and after sort of, listening to it again and looking into the story and researching and whatnot, Antichrist Superstar, I would definitely say, is now, I appreciate it a lot more. I definitely appreciate it more than Mechanical Animals. If I appreciate it more than Hollywood, well, we'll see. Regardless, so it started off just as an album concept, as something that I didn't really appreciate. I thought it was just kind of a cliched sort of rock and roll thing, sort of thematically, some sort of evil demon downtrodden taking over the world and starting to wreak havoc. But, after a while I've learned to appreciate the nuances of that story and to, just look past the fact that the story is kind of standard issue when it comes to rock and roll metal, and think that there's actually there's some novelty to it. It's also kind of a nice formative album for Manson, because before he was doing a lot of circusy stuff, and even on like the demos for Antichrist Superstar there are some kind of circusy bits, but Nine Inch Nails stepped in, Trent Reznor was there, and I think honestly it was Nine Inch Nails being there that really made Antichrist Superstar what it was. But anyways, so it was that summer and all that that I first came to listen to the entirety of Antichrist Superstar. And it's only been in recent months when I've actually started to really appreciate it, For like 2 weeks now, I've listened to just that album on repeats. Every time I listen to it, I hear a new sort of interesting thing. So yeah, in recent times I've been learning to really appreciate that album, and I was thinking to myself, for a while I've had this urge to make a model that's completely unique, something that isn't adapted from something else. Recently my boyfriend Rob recommended that I make another Red Dead MOC, because, that's the only video on my entire channel that gets even a couple views, everything else gets like 7. So he's like, you should do another Red Dead. And this isn't me not saying that I won't make another Red Dead, it's just me saying that, like, I like to mix it up, I like some variety, So, to really bring in some variety to my MOCs and to really just sort of express myself creatively, I decided to make this instead. I had probably planned it out for maybe, like, I was planning this for like 12 hours before I actually went into it, and then I just went into it. Like, it was all a very fast process. The MPAL Suricon was like 2 weeks of prior research that I put into it, but it was not a few hours before I started building that I actually started building, which is quite rare for me. Usually I put in a lot of planning and a lot of, you know, intricacy, part research, you know, all that whatnot, making sure that what I actually want to build is feasible, making sure that no one online has built it before, at least to the degree that I can build it, blah, 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 blah. Horseshoe Overlook had a lot of research like that, you know, like, I do a lot of research for my stuff. But I barely researched this one, and I barely even planned for it. I just kind of went directly into it. It was actually like within an hour before building it that I decided that I was going to be having it flying, and that it would be over this sort of barren wasteland. And a lot of ideas that I did with it literally came to me as I was building. So a few nights ago I started, and it started off very simple. Within the first night I did nothing, but I just made that barren wasteland underneath. I kind of worked around with a few different things, worked around with a few different colors, tried to see what would be best, what would be the most realistic, you know, did some research. Very brief for just like some dried up old fields and whatnot. I mean, for Pete's sake, there's one not too far from where I live. And ultimately I decided that the wet sand and the brown would make for something good. After I laid all that down and whatnot, I decided to make the plow with the oxen. Originally the entire thing was covered in dead stalks, like the dead stalks that you can see behind the oxen. But I ultimately decided that I would go for just the dead stalks behind the oxen, largely because it was getting really annoying rifling through my black pieces, trying to find a bunch of like black dead stock pieces that I could use and put them everywhere. Like it was kind of frustrating, and I knew it wouldn't even really look that good in the end because it's nowhere near the focal point. So I was like, why am I putting all this work into something that won't even look that good? So I just decided to put them behind the oxen just to sort of, you know. Not to mention, if I put too many dead stalks, it would be kind of counteractive, right? It would kind of seem lively in its own way, if that makes any sense, you know? Like, if it was like row by row of clean, freshly planted stalks, even though they're dead, it would look very organized and it would look very neat. And I really wanted to go for something barren, something dead, something hideous. So yeah, I put down the oxen, I put down the stalks back there. I sort of added some extra wet sand pieces on the edge of the wet sand columns just to make it seem a little bit more disordered and just a little bit more in a state of disarray. I added like the brown roots and the scrubs and the brush and whatnot, and like the bushes and things. And honestly, it was the last thing that I did that night was adding in that tree. I didn't plan on having a tree, but I decided that I would add in a tree because originally the skeleton was just kind of flopped on the ground, and I was like, that's kind of lame. So I built a tree so I could have him hanging from the tree because I thought that would nicely sort of just depict a dead world, you know? Even though just conceptually it doesn't make that much sense, like thematically to the album, the idea that this guy's killed himself, I don't know, I think it just looks cool, and it was a neat idea. Originally, I actually had one of the branches with like a little bit of a leaf on it, just had like a little bit of greenery on it, but I ultimately decided to scrap that idea. Like, I don't know, it was just, it felt too hopeful for what I was going for. So I left the tree dead, left it barren, just kind of sitting there in the middle of the field with the guy hanging from it. Took a lot of fiddling with that rope to try to sort of string it around in a way that made it actually suspend the skeleton there, but it ultimately worked, so I was contented. So yeah, the first day that I worked on it, I left it at just that. The next day I got very little time, that's when I just put in the clear columns. As I mentioned in the main video, the clear columns was made possible from all those rounded bits I got from purchasing for the first light, which was a disaster. Lately, I've actually been having a lot of thoughts about making a smaller, sort of more reasonably sized first light MOC. I don't know, just something about it. It feels like unfinished work, you know? It feels like I started something, but I wasn't able to finish it, and there's something deep down inside of me that's like, you know what, Frank, you should actually finish what you did. Like, there's this nagging deep down inside of me. And I don't know, I might approach it in a little while. The wound is still, kind of fresh. Anyways, so the next day I decided that I actually started working on the actual stage itself. From the beginning I knew that I would be having sort of like the stairs at the front and then like the rest would be flat. As I was building it up, like literally as I was building the layer where the wings are connected, I connected in the wings. It took some experimentation with attaching with those wings because the wings are actually quite heavy, but ultimately 6 ratchet joints for each wing suspends them quite nicely. I haven't really fiddled with them by way of like articulation and whatnot. I don't really know if they can, like how much they can bend and like flap around. I just sort of keep it static. But yeah, so I did that, and then that same night that I added in the wings and I built the base, I built the startings of the tapestry back there. The next day, I took down what I had of the tapestry because honestly, I just had 1 layer of pillars rather than the 2 layers of pillars that are there right now. So I really just wanted to make something that was a little bit more thick and something that would hold it up a little bit better. Ultimately, when I put the tapestry up on the new pillars, it was like the new doubled up pillars. Obviously, there's just like Technic struts inside those pillars just to make sure they stay together. It was a lot more sturdy. Very shortly thereafter, I added in those ladders on the sides, and those are pulled very tight. Like, there's very little slack in those ladders. So they also work very nicely to sort of hold the pride flag there. But yeah, so next I added in the lights and whatnot on top, and the balcony and the railing, and also the little control center out back. I added the little control center out back actually before the light fixtures. The back, I really don't like having models that have an angle where it's like, ew, oh, I am not supposed to see it from this way. No. I like to have it so that from all angles there's something to see and something to appreciate, you know? I really don't like having ugly sides, you know? Who does? That's why I made the MPAL Suricon like 360. So I decided to add that little platform at the back, the little control center, and you know, just make it something nice. But yeah, added all that in, fiddled around, made the lights something that I was satisfied with, and yeah. By the way, as I was going along this whole thing, I was using a lot of black. As you can obviously see, there's a lot of black on this. So originally there were very few feathers on those wings, and just sort of as I kept building and as I kept going along, I kept finding new helicopter blade pieces and just sort of putting them on. I would like find one and I'd set it aside, and as soon as I had 2, I would attach them on the same place on either wing, just to make it so that it would all, you know, work out and be symmetrical. So ultimately, I was, like, at the beginning, I was really disappointed. I had these wings attached, and I'm like, that's barely any feathers. But it's at a point where I'm kind of sad that I wasn't able to fill out all the feathers on it, but I'm content with the amount of feathers that I got, you know? Like, I can look at this, and I don't look at it with shame. I'm like, you know what? That's a respectable amount of feathers. Like, yeah, you know? Could have been better, you know? What I'd give for, like, 10 more, but for what it is, yeah. Anyways, next up, I decided to make the red torn-up carpet on either side of the stairs, and then I decided that I was going to be adding on the flames at the front. Those things that are holding the flames at the very front, right there, down here, those are not at all load-bearing. Those were secured to the bottom after the fact. So it's just kind of like an overhanging lip right there that I decided to sort of fill out, you know, give it like some a little bit of angle on the sides, and then have those macaroni bits coming out with the flames. Originally, I had it so that there would be 4 flames on either side, but unfortunately, I realized that my big flame pieces, some of them, rather than being kind of orangish, rather than being yellowish in tint, some of them have a slightly oranger tint towards the end of them. I couldn't stand the look of it. Like, some of them were like yellowy, some of them were like orangey, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna pick one. I picked the yellow because I had more of it, and ultimately I didn't have enough to flesh out 4 on either side because I only had the 7, but I ultimately was contented with it. And honestly, after the fact, now that I'm looking at it, and now that I'm reflecting on it, I feel as though perhaps 4 flames on either side would have been a little bit much. I think ultimately that the 3 was a good choice. But yeah. So next up, I decided to add in the stripper cages, which went through a few phases of development. Originally, it was one of those pillar struts, one of these coming out of the stage, and then some stairs, and then sort of suspending the cage. The main part of all of this was just making sure that the light fixtures were both shining down on one of the stripper cages. So it was just a matter of getting them at that angle, you know? I really didn't like sort of the pillar and then the stairs at all. It looked kind of stupid, so I decided to put the pillars at an angle. And then I gave them those little bases that you can see down there. Ultimately, the bases just felt kind of uninteresting, so I gave them like the little spider legs later on. I don't know, it felt kind of cool. But yeah. So after I got in the cages and the carpet and the flames and the little can't find myself here, little banisters at the front right there, that's when I actually finally started to work on the worm himself. Yeah. I had a faint vision for what I was going to do with him, but it took a lot of taking apart and putting him back together and taking him apart and putting him back together. There's a lot of snot involved with him, particularly with like the inside of his robe with like the rainbow in there. That was an interesting process, although ultimately I think it ended up looking really quite good. It was also kind of an arduous process to get the arms at a proper length. I kept trying to like over joint them, and they would always look too long. It was really kind of difficult trying to get like the rainbow cuffs in there and also try to make it so that the limbs were like a reasonable length, but ultimately I got it to a point that I was contented with. The robe, like the bottom part, wasn't too big of a challenge. I just sort of had it flow out and just sort of flow back onto the thing. I based it actually on an old MOC that I made years and years and years ago of this sort of larger figure character. That I like made a big robe for. A robe just felt appropriate for this character. When it comes to the visual inspiration of the worm himself, I knew very early on in my planning that I was going to have him be big. I wanted it to be like a great big sort of monstrosity, just to sort of symbolize where he is like power-wise in the plot right now in the story, you know. So I always I was planning from the get-go to have him be like larger and whatnot, so you know, having him that size. There's not really that much visual inspiration for him outside of the antlers from anything in particular concerning with Marilyn Manson. You know, it's just the antlers just felt like a cool thing. I was remembering that very cool visual that I now remember is from, is it the Nobodies? I think it is. But yeah. I mentioned in the review that I wasn't sure whether to give him black empty eyes or white empty eyes, and I decided to go with the white because it scared me more as a kid. I don't know if you can tell, no one really likes me or cares about me, so no one really mentions anything outside of "Where's Arthur Morgan?" on the Red Dead Redemption MOC. But his eyes are slightly crooked, one is higher than the other. I did that intentionally because it felt like a good way to visually and subtly convey that he was kind of deranged. Originally for him, actually, I had a plan where he was going to have this big, grotesque, wide, toothy grin. I was going to have it be kind of like this big, nightmarish smile. I couldn't really do it in a way that I was satisfied. I tried a few different ways. I tried to get him to have this big, scary smile, which felt like it would be a cool, creepy idea. I just couldn't do it. Like, I tried a few different things, but I just couldn't do it. And ultimately, with all this visual, dramatic stuff going on, it felt, honestly, I decided ultimately to just give him no mouth at all, and it would have been cool if I could pull off the big smile, but I ultimately decided that having no mouth at all would be better than having, like, a botched mouth, so, yeah. Something that I did a lot of changing around with was, like, his big white collar. I really wasn't entirely sure what I was gonna do with that, I found, like, some sloped pieces, and I just kind of set them aside while I was building his robe, and I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to use you later. Originally, I actually had it so that he had, like, trees growing out of him, like a cherry blossom on either shoulder just kind of growing out, and, like, a cherry blossom tree acting as, like, his collar. Ultimately, that felt a little bit stupid, and I was like, this character is already kind of visually bright. I don't want him to look like a good guy. So I ultimately decided to leave that out, and I decided to leave it with, like, the dramatic but simple collar. I was kind of thinking to myself, like, at the beginning that I would give him wings, but at this point I already had the stripper cages in, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm thinking, I think this collar makes a good sort of substitute for wings, not to mention, just, like, as power symbolism. He already has a massive pair of wings coming off of this stage. Like, I think that'll do, I ultimately, a part of me deep down wishes that I had found a way to give him wings, but that's just how it goes. The necklace, the Baphomet necklace around his neck, I was thinking of something sort of demonic, satanic to give him, so I threw the Baphomet around him. Hands and fingers are pretty simple. It's just battle droid arms and just, simple 1x2 pieces with bar attachments. But yeah. So after that, I just, coming towards the end, I made the entire pulpit right there. The pulpit was just all improvised. I was just thinking to myself, I just gotta make something dark and scary and like a testament to his nightmarishness. So, I just built it up and I gave it like the teeth and I gave it like a flame. So I'm like, I still got one flame left. Gave it the Jack Skellington collar, gave him like the skull, bat wings, just all sorts of scary spookiness. I don't know, there wasn't really much of a plan going into it. When it comes to that pulpit, I was literally just making it up as I went along. Very shortly after I made the pulpit, I attached those 2 lamp posts that you can see on either side. Just something to give it a little bit more visual flair. I feel like if the lamp posts weren't there, like, who would even miss them? I don't know, it was just something kind of fun and extra that I wanted to add in. Finally, I got around to doing the minifigures. And at first, for the cops, I had them wearing the Lego City cop uniform. I think it was the cop uniform from, like, I want to say 2016, 2017. Anyways, I had them in that originally, and I'm looking at them, and I've given them, like, these assault rifles, and they're wearing this, like, goofy, bright blue uniform, and I'm like, that's not really what I'm going for. So I decided to go with the Robo-Swats from the Lego Movie. Unfortunately, I didn't have 6 Robo-Swat uniforms, so I gave the 2 higher-ranking cops, Commissioner Gordon and Barbara Gordon's uniforms, respectively. Just felt like a nice sort of additional thing. The decision to put in cops was kind of like, I don't know, you could call it like a political statement. The idea that even when it comes to hideous, like, obvious tyrants, the law enforcement will still stand in and stand by their sworn leader and whatnot. I don't know, just... Also just wanted to give the air that this figure is not just like a demon from the pits of hell, but its power isn't just physical, but also like political. I decided to imbue all of the cop figures with wings. Just felt appropriate given that they're in sort of like a position of power in this story, you know. After building those cop figures, I built the strippers, the two that are in the cages I made hotter, and then the one sort of being hung by the Antichrist is more of a dad bod, really. I only ever intended to have the two, but a part of, like, as I was building the figures, I had this nagging sort of feeling, kind of like, the Antichrist is there, but he's not really doing anything, is he? He's just kind of standing there, like, I wasn't really pleased with it. But then, I found out that I had more yellow legs than I thought I did, so I could make a third stripper, and I was trying to think of, like, a cool place to put the stripper, like, put him on the podium, put him on the stairs, put him draped over the shoulder of the Antichrist. But then I thought to myself, this is a being of such unbelievable hate and malevolence. Literally, why am I not having him kill this guy? So I decided, like, I was thinking to myself, this is a perfect way to tie in, like, the barren desert below and all the craziness going on the flying stage. So I decided to put a chain around this guy's neck and just put him, like, tweezed in between, like, the index and the thumb of the Antichrist. Make it so he's just kind of watching this guy die effortlessly, like as he just kills him as if it's nothing, just kind of holding him up there. Maybe as an example, maybe as just simple entertainment. I thought it was just something, I don't know, it felt really right to give him, like, this additional sort of dark thing to do, just hold up this guy and just kind of watch him just kind of strangle there. It just felt perfect. It felt very much in line with sort of the nightmarish themes of the latter part of that album, The idea that this worm character has risen to power and now he's just using it to just kill the world. I don't know, just, it felt very proper. I was kind of self-conscious earlier. I was thinking to myself, this Antichrist figure is looking kind of like a good guy. I've given him the Baphomet thing, I've given him the antlers and the white eyes, but he's still here in, like, a white and rainbow robe. Like, it's an evil setting and everything, but he doesn't look evil himself, And so I felt like giving him that guy to strangle just felt like it was the perfect thing to push it over the edge, just to make him, like, evil enough. It felt like, I don't know, it felt like it was finally coming together. After that, added a few other little bits and bobs, details here and there. And ultimately, this is the product that we got. I'm reasonably proud of it. Hasn't gotten that much Instagram traffic, hasn't gotten that much YouTube traffic, but then again, how am I supposed to, like, market to people this MOC? It doesn't feel good enough to post to, like, r/afol, although I might lose me karma. It's not really, like, kid appropriate. It's not based on something that people recognize. Even someone who's even someone who's heard Manson's albums wouldn't know what this is. So this, I don't know, it's just something I kind of made for me, I don't really know who this could possibly interest or appeal to or whatever. It's just something that I made for fun, for amusement, and just to sort of express myself creatively. Yeah. So, whatever. I don't know. I don't even know if it's good. It kind of stinks. Who cares? I got some new Lego sets and I'm gonna be building them soon. So you guys can... So there's actually reviews coming out, although... Who cares? Who cares? Whatever. Nothing matters. You ever... Fuck it. Shoot. Goodbye. Goodbye.